Hello to all of my lovely testers. Today I'm going to be going over the Dominator of Shyish, which is a hard specialization for the Sorcerer. It is a healing hard specialization, like we've gone over in some other videos now. We actually have a tag system that we use, so for example this is an anchor. It does keep people alive, augments their abilities, it's a healer, it uses multi-resources, it's offensive, it's ranged, and it uses a staff. So sorcerers in general use a mechanic called the Winds of Magic. So basically whenever they turn on this toggle, they will gain winds of either Death, Shadow, or Beast, which is labeled Shyish, Gur, and Ugu whenever it actually shows up here. And whenever you are not channeling this effect, you could augment your skills. So for example, if you go here, you'll see that it says augmented restores additional health. And that is the general Sorc mechanic, is like you turn that on, then you press a button and it will consume one, and it will do an additional effect. So notice that it heals twice here. That is for every lore of something, like lore of beast, lore of shadow, lore of death spell. That is the generic mechanic. Learning Sorc in general is knowing when you should be in your channeling and when you should not. But the Dominator of Shyish is actually a life tap healer, so they don't have a lot of direct damage spells. So like if you go through, or direct healing spells, if you go through these, you'll see that most of them don't like heal, right? They do damage and apply effects, with the notable exception of Morse Peace. So how does this hard specialization actually heal people if it is labeled as a healer that has a toolkit that allows for significant restoration of health? Well, one of the primary ways is Aspect of the Dread Knight, where you heal group mates within 100 feet for 40% of the damage you deal. And you normally apply that by healing someone with your direct spell, Morse Peace. So like if you apply Morse Peace on them, you get a buff on the target, which puts the Aspect of the Dread Knight. So whenever you do damage, for example, like if I use Blade Wind here, you'll see that Aspect of the Dread Knight heals me for 40% of the damage I dealt. The other way is that there is another passive called Spirit Leech, which reduces the damage that your Doombolt and Word of Pain deal, but causes your defensive target to be healed for the amount of damage that it deals. So for example, if I Doombolt here, I will get Spirit Leech 4, healing me for 150% of the damage I do, and that would actually stack with Aspect of the Dread Knight. So for example, Doombolt with a Aspect of the Dread Knight, my defensive target gets healed for Spirit Leech, and then all group mates that have Aspect of the Dread Knight get healed. Also notice I crit on both of these, so it also increases the amount of healing. That is the general method of playing the Shyish, is that you have to keep Aspect of the Dread Knight on people that you want to heal, or have your defensive target be set whenever Word of Pain or Doombolt deals damage. But we will go through the rest of the toolkit that you have as well, and some synergies that involve that also are all oriented either towards being a healer or providing some offensive support. So obviously, Winds of Magic we already talked about. Blade Wind is just your basic attack. It deals a small amount of damage and generates action points. You do have a passive that increases the amount of action points that you can generate from it. Doombolt is primarily used to trigger Spirit Leech and obviously Aspects of Dread Knight. Word of Pain is basically just using some of the same toolkit that the offensive, like the DPS Sorcs, can use. Word of Pain, same concept as Doombolt. Arnzenball's Black Horror you can apply on your teammates, and whenever they are attacked, you will deal damage around them, and that's the normal effect. There is a tactic that actually turns that into a heal, and we'll get into that in a minute. Notice that these don't actually have lures, so they do not consume Winds of Magic, and they do not gain augmented effects. So a Doombolt will always do Doombolt, and it has no additional effect because of the augmentation system. These sets are actually set by lore. So Dominator of Shyish is obviously a master of death magic, so we'll go into that first. So lore of death. The first one is Morse Peace. This is your only actual direct heal, and whenever you use it, you put Aspect of the Dread Knight on someone. By augmenting it, you gain additional healing. You won't really focus, like, see, this is the gear that I'm using, which is an offensive gear set. You do get willpower, because willpower does increase your sagacity, which allows you to bypass resistances, so you do more damage, which means that you get more healing, right, from your Spirit Leech and aspects of Dread Knight. But you're very unlikely to just have like massive amounts of it, at least in the first stages of Interbellum. So while you can like stack willpower to make this better, you're still oftentimes better actually stacking offensive stats so that you can use your life tap healing. The next spell for Lord of Death is Amonrath. What it is basically a channel, and if you augment it, you can apply Aspects of the Dread Knight to your entire party at once. But notice the high action point cost comparatively to most other abilities, and notice the also 30-second cooldown. So not only do you have to spend a Wind of Shyish, you do have to have a 30-second cooldown for it, and of course, channel the effect. But as you can see, like if you... Oh, I did not augment that. Actually, yes, I did. So, as you can see, the channel does also trigger Aspect of the Dread Knight. Soul Harvest is a dot that you can apply, and when you put it on people, it deals damage, and it heals your defensive target for 100% of the damage that it deals, and that is including even if they don't have Aspect of Dread Knight. Mockery of Doom is basically your anti-healing. You can put this on somebody, and you do additional damage to the healer and target whenever they are healed, because you are, an offensive style healer. Your Winds of Ulgu, or Shadow, is pretty much only used for your 1cc in this hard specialization, for your 1cc, and a on-hit effect that you can apply. You can give this on-hit to people in order to have them do additional damage whenever they attack. Thing to note about augmentation systems is if you have an effect that can be applied normally and augmented, you actually can get both instances of the effect. So you'll see that whenever I run out of Winds of Ulgu for this, my next cast will be the normal version, which is a 30-second, so I can actually have both, and both will trigger. And you can put this on multiple targets. You're only basically restricted by, of course, your wins, your AP, and your GCDs. The Lore of Beast for the Dominator of Shyish is almost entirely defensive abilities. So you've got Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, which basically just gives you a whole bunch of resistances at the cost of reduced impact resistance. And if you augment it, you get the 20% damage reduction effect. You can put that on other people as well. Let's see if I can find it. And then you've got Boar's Hide, which is like your personal defensive cooldown. You take less damage, but your cast times are increased. So like you're obviously not going to be using Doom Bolts and stuff, because like if you pop this, your Doom Bolt becomes a 4-second cast, and that's just kind of... But of course, instant casts still happen normally. And then Curse of Enri here is like your only version of a secondary damage type of Corporeal versus Spirit, and also can be augmented to increase the damage that your team might do. Not only does toughness reduce like crit and direct damage, you also can do corporeal resistance for anyone else in your team that actually needs to do corporeal damage. That is the general toolkit. Like I said, most of this other stuff has some function when you get into tactics. Pretty sure we went over most of the passives, but by going through some other stuff. But Final Words makes you heal better against targets that are low health, or do more damage against targets that are low health. Embodiment of Shyish means that anytime you are augmenting the spells that you're gaining, basically 18 adrenaline over 3 seconds. Blessing of Shyish gives you some pushback immunity, and Acceptance of Fate makes this a 1.25 second cast rather than a 1.8. Adrenaline abilities are very similar. They have the same core like healing morales of Res, Focus Mind, Group Bubble, and AoE Res. You also get an A1 as a root, so if you want a second CC, you have to give up your in-combat Res for it. You get a buff that massively increases all resistances to a target. You get the Druki Murderous Prowess, which increases your crit and accuracy for a time period, which is actually very useful for this class, because as you can see earlier, like when I crit with Doombolt, it did a fair amount of damage. I actually have, like, where is it? Basically my crits are 180% damage. So it crit earlier for like 14 something, and it deals 786, and that's because of penetration. That's the adrenalines and passives. Tactics actually can change a lot of these additional effects into healing abilities themselves. Obviously, you have the normal Druki tactics of like you are healed for damage you deal. I won't really ever see a Dominator of Shyish use this, but you have it. You can gain crit whenever you use your Blade Wind or when any other Druki in your party use their basic attacks. You've got Water Rush, which is a normal healing. Like it's the archetype healer tactic, which is whenever you're attacked, it increases your stacks of outgoing healing. A note: life taps are actually affected. They're not affected by like willpower, right? But they are affected by the healing output and healing received stats. So like, if you put a healing debuff on somebody, and then you go and life tap them, like you life tap on someone who has a healing debuff, they will receive less of that life tap. The only thing that's not affected by these two stats is HP4 and absorbs. So any form of healing can be affected by those stats, including potions. But yeah, you have a couple normal Thork tactics. So you've got this one, which every Thork has, which is whenever you spend one of these Winds of Magic, your next offensive ability dispels an enchantment. You can reduce the cast time of Doombolt from 3 seconds to 2.25. And you can make Word of Pain harder to dispel and happen faster. So normally it's a 10-second duration. You can equip this and you can make it a 6-second duration, right? And be a cripple instead of a ailment, which means that it's harder to dispel. Then you have your actual specialization tactics. These are the ones that are going to be more likely to make these things into heals. So you've got the Fate of Bajuna. This actually makes that your life tap dot do more damage, 75% more damage, but no longer has the innate life tap. So you're thinking, why as a healer would I actually want to run this tactic? Well, you see, if you do more damage with it, you actually get more aspect of the Dread Knight. So it becomes better for AoE healing when you put aspects of the Dread Knight on multiple people. Whereas not running this tactic makes Soul Harvest better for a single target. Finger of Life causes your on-hit effect here that you can put on multiple targets, and your on-reflect here to heal the target for 75% of the damage they deal. So like you put on Aqua's Mind Razor, and you'll see... let me actually equip the tactic, Josh. And you'll see when I do damage here that Aqua's Mind Razor heals me for damage that I do. Then you've got Grease End, which is like another method of offensive support, where whenever you're throwing on Mockery of Death, whenever someone heals them, not only are you doing damage to the person healing them, you're also reducing their healing output. So it's a way of making healers in general. It's an anti-healer tactic for an anti-healer ability. Master of Shyish is just a mechanic increaser. Basically, you always can generate Winds of Death because you are a Winds of Death specialist. Even when you don't have this toggle. Notice that this went up to 3 instead of 2, even though this was not on. And Purple Paw of Shyish is another way of healing people. You put an absorb on people whenever you consume Winds of Magic. In general, learning the Winds of Magic mechanic is very important for playing a Sork because, there's a huge difference between pressing this and just getting these, and then doing it later whenever you get the 20% damage reduction, right? Also, so that is important. The primary weakness of the class, yes, you do a lot of damage and do a lot of healing, but as you notice, a lot of that stuff requires cast times, and people are not going to let you just sit here and cast, right? That's the idea. You only have one main CC by yourself, so you do require group support in order to keep you alive, because, you spamming Doom Bolts and Moore's Peace and stuff like that can be difficult. If you do want to go with more like self-survivability, for example, by taking this route, you can't have your in-combat res. So while this may seem powerful when I'm sitting here attacking barrels and not being attacked back, at the end of the day, all it takes is somebody to actually decide to come attack me, and then now I've got to start moving, and I can't apply aspect of the Dread Knight, and I can't Doombolt, and stuff like that, right? And as soon as I run out of winds, I can't even do instant cast Soul Harvest and stuff like that. But that is a quick rundown on how you would play the Dominator of Shyish. It's a little bit easier to understand than most. It's mostly just about keeping this aspect of the Dread Knight on people and pre-planning with your additional effects until you actually need to start using your damage-based healing. And that's the Dominator of Shyish.